Those are what he has outlined as the 5 basic needs. You cannot survive, you cannot flourish, you cannot make choices, you cannot behave without those 5 basic needs. And those basic needs drive every decision, every behavior, every choice we make. He also says that all behavior is purposeful and motivated by our innocent desire to satisfy the basic needs woven into our genes. These aren't needs that you create on your own, you are born with them. And the strength of each need varies from one person to another. So some people really need the feeling of love, and others really need the idea of freedom, and others really need the idea of power. It's based on personality. The next thing you need to understand is the quality world. So basic needs represent basic needs represent nature, and the quality world represents nurture. So your quality world is what you want in life. It's your perfect world. So as we live our lives and interact with others, we each kind of build this own unique quality world that includes the people, the activities, the values, the things that we like and that are most important to us as individuals. So everything we place in our quality world is satisfying to us, and it satisfies those 5 basic needs. So some examples, oh, I love my best friend, or I feel a sense of power when I'm singing on stage, or I have fun when I'm playing with friends. Those are just simple choices that you make, things that you don't think about, but that's part of your quality world. Now, throughout our lives, we add and we delete pictures from our quality world. Some people develop quality world pictures that are unhealthy and irresponsible. This is where things like addiction come through, because they feel like they only have this sense of power or a sense of freedom when they're drinking alcohol or taking other drugs. And some people have fun, feel power when they hurt others. So this is where choice theory suggests that parents and educators and the community and the environment at large can promote environments that encourage others to develop quality world pictures that let them satisfy their needs responsibly with positive things like, I'm going to hang out with this person because they make me feel good, not I'm going to take this drug because it makes me feel good. The next thing you need to understand is reality versus perception. So even though we all live in the real world, choice theory contends that what matters is our perception of reality. So this is the idea where 2 people interpret one story differently, or 2 people watch the news and take something else out of it, or something happens at school and the next day the story is completely changed. Perception changes things. So we behave based on what we perceive to be real, whether we believe it or not. This is where a lot of mental illness stigmas come from, because if you have a mood disorder and you think everything is terrible, your perception of reality changes, and your actions and behaviors are going to change accordingly because it is your reality, it is your real world. So choice theory states that the information passes through 3 distinct filters, and that's kind of how we create our perception of reality. So it goes through the sensory filter, what you take in, what you hear, see, smell, taste. The knowledge filter goes through what you already know. So past experiences you have, knowledge you have, people you know, and then it goes through the deepest filter, which is your value filter. So this is where your biases come in. And so because of these filters, like I said, 2 or more people can witness the same event or participate in the same activity, and they develop radically different perceptions. So we may all agree that Trump is president of the United States, but there are multiple perceptions on how good or bad of a president he is. And if you talk to a couple of state fans and a couple of U of M fans, you'll understand that the real world is perceived very differently because of their different value filters. The next thing it goes to is the comparing place. So our brain continually compares 2 images, which is our perception of reality, which we just discussed, and the quality world picture that we want, so what we want out of a situation. Every time you're considering or making a choice, your mind instantly thinks without you realizing, what's going to benefit me? What's going to make me the most happiest in this situation? And that goes to your quality world. So then the purpose of all behavior is to create a match between what we perceive and what we want, because we'd all love to have a picture-perfect world. So obviously, you're not going to choose something that damages your quality world. So when there's a match, we maintain the behaviors we have chosen. When there's a mismatch that causes some type of discomfort, usually internal, we instantly search for new behaviors that create the match we seek. So for example, a classroom teacher looks around the room and notices that the students are really involved in the activity she's planned. She gets a positive internal signal and she keeps doing the same teaching strategy. Or a parent notices that the child is behaving poorly at home and school and is getting phone calls. So the mismatch between what the parent wants of a well-behaved child and the actual child's behavior leads him to try new strategies to try and help the child behave better. The next thing it goes into is total behavior. And this says that all behavior has 4 components: acting, thinking, feeling, and physiology. So what you act, what you actually do, what you choose, what actions you take, how you hurt people, how you say things, feeling, how you're feeling. And then your physiology, what's actually going on in your body, chemicals in your body, immune responses, everything. So when we change any one component of behavior, the other components change as well, all 3 of them. So the 2 easiest ones to control are acting and thinking. You can control your thoughts and you control what you do. So it's almost virtually impossible to change your feelings or physiology directly, but you can, change your feelings with positive thoughts. This is kind of where the idea of the study of happiness and psychology is coming from, where they say, happy thoughts, happy mind. Now, since all 4 components work in concert together, we have a lot more control over our feelings and physiology than we realize. And so by choosing to act or think differently, our feelings and physiology automatically change as well, even if you're not realizing it. Now, practitioners of choice theory help people choose responsible action and thoughts that lead them to feel better and positively impact their psychology. This is the idea of functional medicine as well, where you use your brain to heal your stomach and other things like that. So now choice theory has 3 main principles. All we do is behave, almost all behavior is chosen, and we are driven by our genes to fulfill 5 basic needs, which I told you earlier. So those are the 3 main principles, and from here, he builds off into 10 axioms, which are pretty much just like established principles. So the only person whose behavior we control is our own. You can't control what somebody else does. Your behavior may affect them, but you're not creating their action. All we can do is give another person information. Whether that information is false or correct, whether it's based on your perception, their perception, the real world, the quality world, you're still relaying information. All long-lasting psychological problems are relationship problems. This goes back to the 5 basic needs of needing to feel loved and belonging. And that what happened in the past has everything to do with what we are today, but we can only satisfy our basic needs right now and plan to continue satisfying them in the future. This goes into the idea of if you do something that you don't like, it's going to change. You're going to delete that picture from your quality world. You're going to change your behavior. We can only satisfy our needs by satisfying the pictures in our quality world. Your quality world is an idea in where every basic need is fully met to its maximum capacity. So to satisfy those needs fully, you obviously need to fully satisfy your quality world. All we do is behave. This was also one of the 3 principles, so you can see it's really important. We don't do anything but behave. Yes, behavior is part of total behavior, which includes your thinking, acting, feeling, and physiology, but all you do is behave. It's all tied into one. All behavior is total behavior, made up of the 4 components: acting, thinking, feeling, and physiology. All total behavior is chosen. We can only control our feelings. Again, like you control how you act, you control how you think, and that affects everything else. And then all total behavior is designated by verbs and named by the part that is the most recognizable. So I'm feeling blank. I did this. It's all verb actions. It's not people, place, or things. So rather than seeing people shaped as kind of this people shaped by rewards and punishments, which is what psychologists used to think how we make choices, like, oh, if I choose choice A, I get this reward. If I choose choice B, I get this punishment type thing, whether it's a good grade, bad grade for studying. But choice theory suggests that we have some capacity to make choice and exercise control in our lives beyond rewards and punishments, that it goes bigger than that. Choice theory also teaches that we're always motivated by what we want. We're very greedy humans. We go to what we want, and even if you think you're caring about more people, about other people more, you're still thinking about yourself subconsciously. And so choice theory then outlines the basic motivations and the process of choice, but in the end, choice theory and choice comes down to one thing: your preference and what you want. So how do we form, let's skip way past. Okay, how do we form preferences? Bias, both explicit and implicit bias. Now, bias, according to Merriam-Webster, is either an inclination of temperament or outlook, especially a personal and sometimes unreasoned judgment. So you don't have to know if you have bias. That's called implicit bias. It's when you don't know. There's a lot of really interesting quizzes on it, and I'll get into that in a minute. But first I'm going to tell a little story. So there was a blind woman. Her name was Sheena, She went into a nail salon where she had to choose between 2 light shades of pink. Ballet Slippers and Adorable were the names of the nail polish. And she's blind, and they sound very similar. So the colors were described to her as an elegant shade of pink and a glamorous shade of pink. It's really hard to tell the difference between. So then she decided to conduct a study based on the 2 colors where she asked women who could see to choose which shade they preferred. Half of the study participants couldn't tell the shades apart at all, but the other half, they chose the name Adorable when they were presented with the label as bottles. Now, when they knew the names, they switched the other nail polish and chose Ballet Slippers. Now, just that simple title change, the name of the polish changed their preference because they had some type of bias towards the word Adorable and the words Ballet Slippers. Nail polish should be judged by its color, you would think, but the name caused the women to change their preference, and that is bias. So why does bias matter in making choices? Well, some biases are conscious, and this is called explicit bias. So I prefer dogs over cats. I think they're cuter, and I think they're less likely to scratch me, and I know that. So that's explicit, I know it. Now, if you go into implicit bias, it's something that's unconscious. So in Malcolm Gladwell, I know you guys read him, he has a book called Blink, which is the one I read sophomore year. And he really describes implicit bias. He uses this thing called Project Implicit by Harvard, and you can take a variety of quizzes. And if you take the racial quiz, it just shows correlation between white and good and black and bad, and then they switch. And it just reveals subconscious biases that you don't know you have, and they have a variety of quizzes. I suggest you take them. I put the link up there in the next few slides. But so does bias really impact our choice making? Well, let's see. So I asked you guys to take that quiz for my math class. It was not for my math class. It was to reveal bias. So you tried regular Coke and off-brand Coke. I don't want to take the quiz. And hang on. But you really just tried off-brand Coke. None of it was filled with regular Coke. I know some of you were saying they taste the exact same. I don't know why it's not working. I'll just pull it up on my phone. But I wanted to see if you guys would have a brand bias. Because I read a study about a psychologist who went into a class of people that were majoring in creating and studying wine. And he gave them a cheap gas station wine and a really expensive Merlot. Well, they all just drank the cheap gas station wine and thought it was 2 different wines. They described the cheap one as flat and dull and tasteless and sour and bitter, and the expensive one as exquisite and amazing, and it just really was the same wine. So they had a bias towards the brand. We tend to like expensive things. So I just wanted to see what you guys said. So 95% of you liked Coca-Cola more than Big K. You all drank Big K.
Suckers.
So that's implicit bias. You probably weren't even thinking, ew, I hate off-brand. You have that natural bias towards more expensive things. Like if you had the choice between like Lululemon leggings or Walmart leggings, like you're gonna go with Lululemon even if they're the same exact thing, which they are, but. So I wanted to see if you guys would fall for it. So we're taught to prefer higher quality products and associate quality with indicators like price and modern, and that's just what our culture has done to us. We've conformed to that idea. Now, bias doesn't have to be about one particular thing, like me preferring dogs over cats. In psychology, bias can refer to behavioral tendencies. The anchoring effect is the tendency to be drawn to the first information you find. So if you see that something's 5% off, it doesn't matter what the price is because it's on sale. Like that's what you're going to be drawn to. The framing effect is the manner in which our choices are presented to us, and it affects how we make choices. So Loftus and Palmer, psychologists, investigated this by having people watch a video of a car crash. They then asked them leading questions like, how fast did the car bump into it? And then they asked another group of participants, how fast did the car crash? How fast did the car smash? And when they changed the verb, the leading verb, the speed estimates of the car changed. Bump was 10 miles an hour less than smashed. So it just shows how those little biases, just with language, really affect the choices we make. And then there's the loss aversion bias, which I kind of touched at the beginning. We just don't like missing out on things. If you're choosing one thing, like, you're not going to choose the other. This is actually why Wendy's 4 for $4 deal is so successful. I mean, it's also a great deal, but you're not missing out on nuggets if you choose a burger, so everybody likes it because they're not having loss aversion. And then there's group bias. So this is when a person in the group acts similarly to the rest of the group. This is conformity. Interestingly enough, this occurs through like really major things like religious affiliations and countries and ethnicities. But at the same time, if I were to do a coin flip and divide you into 2 groups and do a silly like activity where somebody was the winner, you would instantly start forming a bond and share identities with the people in your group. You would instantly conform without realizing it. In really small ways, you conform to having the same goal, the same idea, the same strategies. So this will bring me to my next point, the choice to conform or not to conform. Now, just to review, conformity is a change in behavior or belief as a result of real or imagined group pressure. Now, how does choice theory apply to this? Well, Glasser states that relationships are key to our process of choice making. So if you want to fit in and have friends and be accepted and loved, like, you're gonna conform. You don't want to be rejected. So this is better broken down when one considers the types of conformity. So there's compliance, identification, and internalization. Compliance is like you're doing something, but you disagree with it. And then identification is you identify with a group of people, whether it's your religion or whatever, and so you start taking on the same characteristics or the same ideals. And then the biggest, like most impactful type of conformity is internalization. This is when you take on a choice or behavior through group pressure and you internalize it. You internalize that feeling and you truly believe it yourself. So psychologists have studied conformity in 1,000 ways, so I'm gonna just share some of the most famous studies with you. So this is Milgram's experiment. I'm gonna give you an outline and then there's just like a quick video. So participants volunteered and they were told that they were participating in an experiment to investigate memory. So then they drew straws to get their roles, learner or teacher. But there was a Confederate or a fixed person that was always gonna be the learner. So then there was an experimenter and he was dressed in a gray lab coat. It was played by an actor, but he's just kind of supposed to be an authority figure. He's the experimenter, he's running the thing. So Milgram put the teacher and the learner in 2 separate rooms, one for the teacher, and then the learner also had an electric shock generator in his room. So the learner was strapped to the electric shock chair and put with electrodes, and after he had been given a list of words to learn, the teacher was to test him by naming a word and asking him to recall other words from the list. Now, if he was wrong, he had to get a shock. And every time he was wrong, the voltage went up. He wasn't actually getting shocked because he was just an actor, but the teacher was administering the shocks, or they felt like they were administering the shocks. And the learner, because he was an actor, would intentionally give these wrong answers, and so that the teacher would have to administer the shock. Did you have a question? Oh, sorry, thought I saw your hand. So then if the teacher was like, no, I don't want to, like, this is wrong, the experimenter, the guy in the lab coat, would say, please continue. The experiment requires you to continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue, and you have no other result, or no other choice but to continue. And the results were shocking. Oh, maybe this is on. No, this is on. There's nothing to do.
Watch you across the room.
A decade earlier, psychologist Stanley Milgram had also looked at how we respond to authority. In order to understand how people were induced to obey unjust regimes and participate in atrocities such as the Holocaust, he set up an experiment. Volunteers were told they were taking part in scientific research to improve memory.
You open those and tell me which of you was which with teacher learned.
Separated by a screen, the teacher would ask the learner questions in a word game and administer an electric shock when the answer was incorrect. He was told to increase the voltage with each wrong answer.
Cloud, horse, rock, house. Answer. Wrong. 150 volts. Answer. Horse.
Experiment. That's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please.
Continue, please. Go right ahead.
I refuse to go in. Let me out.
You refuse to go on. The experiment requires you to continue, teacher. Please continue.
Participants didn't know that the learner was really an actor, and the so-called shocks harmless.
You're gonna get a shock. 180 volts.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Stand it. I'm not gonna kill that man. I mean, who's gonna take the responsibility for anything that happens to that gentleman? I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please. All right, next one. Slow. Walk, dance, truck, music. And
2/3 of volunteers were prepared to administer a potentially fatal electric shock when encouraged to do so by what they perceived as a legitimate authority figure. In this case, a man in a white coat.
375 volts. I think something's happened to the phone, man. I don't get no answer. He was hollering for less voltage. Can you check in and see if he's all right, please?
Milgram's findings horrified America. They showed that decent American citizens were as
Okay, so Milgram decided to investigate that after the Holocaust because he couldn't understand how so many people got behind the Holocaust, the atrocities of the Holocaust. Nazis were doing things, people were supporting it, they were burning books, they were terrified of Jews, they hated them, they spit on them. So he wanted to understand why. And it's through the conformity of compliance. In the same way that the researcher actor in a lab coat was an authority figure, Hitler, the government, the media was an authority figure to the people involved in the Holocaust. And so they practiced conformity by compliance. Where you disagree with it morally, you could see the participant, like he was distraught by it. He was very uncomfortable with continuing, but because he was being told to, and there was no punishment if he didn't, he just felt like he had to, he participated. Now 65%, that's over 2/3 of the participants, went to the highest level of 450 volts. That's a fatal shock. All participants continued to 300 volts. So everyone was compliant.